Hello and welcome to the Inside Track, the podcast where we talk to the experts and global leaders making things happen in the world of innovation, business, design, tech, and culture. I'm Fuzlin Esau, and today we're joined by Derek Gibb, Commercial Director here at Hedgehog Lab, as well as our guests Barbara Alvarez Solanilla and Dr. Ana Rojo-Echeburua. Thank you both for joining us. Before we jump in, I would love to know more about you and your journeys. Let's kick it off with you, Ana.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having us here today. Really excited about the conversation, and thank you for the introduction. My background is in mathematics. I did a degree, master's, and PhD in mathematics, and then I transitioned into the AI world, and I've been working in this space for the last 10 years. I have lots of different types of experience in terms of roles. So I had really hands-on experience, but also leadership roles and roles in strategy, consulting, and advising. I worked in the startup world a lot, even founding startups myself, and also getting into the world of investment as well. And on the side, at the moment, I still do some advisory work for startups, not only in Scotland, but around the world. I'm CTO of AinTools, which is a company in Dubai. And I also have my own podcast. It's called the AI Frame Podcast, which talks about what AI actually is and also touches a little bit on the startup world and the investment into this world as well.
I'll make sure to link through to that. Barbara, if you could give us a little bit about you.
Sure. Again, thank you so much for having us here. I'm not going to be able to top up the intro that Anna did, but I'm going to do my best. I have a master's degree in journalism and international relationships, and then I've got a second master's degree in digital marketing. So although I started my journey in the professional world as a journalist and doing marketing, it quickly shifted into digital transformation and data. So I've got over 10 years of experience as a data practitioner and data manager. My working experience in the UK spans from industry, agency, government, and academia. I've been at the University of Glasgow for the last 3.5 years. And at the moment, I am head of data for Transit. Transit is a research program involving 8 different universities across the UK. It's led by Heriot University in Edinburgh. University of Glasgow is one of the main universities of this program. So although I'm head of data for Transit, I'm employed by the University of Glasgow. A little bit about Transit. Transit is a research project for the digital twinning of the decarbonization of the transport system in the UK. So that involves a lot of new and emerging technologies, complex technologies and infrastructure, a lot of data. Some of it is sensitive data, unstructured and unstructured data, as well as different use and development of AI tools. So that spans a little bit of everything. Outside of my role, my current role at Transit, like I said, I've been doing data management, governance, digital transformation, and operationalization of data for quite some time now. So I've come across a little bit of everything. I was one of the main people in government leading the safe adoption of GDPR and the use of technologies and kind of like capturing data online, which is where I really got into the importance of ethics and responsible use of data and later of AI. I'd say that until about 2-3 years ago, my focus was solely on data, but inevitably as AI has become more of a thing and is really embedded into organizations, and given how intertwined data management and AI are, and how important is like a proper governance management of data for a successful adoption of AI, it's been kind of like a natural progression. My role has expanded to include governance on AI and responsible adoption of AI across organizations.
Derek, they already know you, so I'm not going to ask you to do an intro.
I think it's amazing. A call with 2 Spanish people who haven't mentioned what happened 2 nights ago, but
We were being graceful.
you know what? I'm delighted. But my team in the sweepstakes was Argentina, so I was devastated, but not really. Very much pleased for a Spanish
I think we're all pleased with the Spanish win. I think at
99% of the world.
It got to the stage where everyone was like, we just don't want Argentina to win. And luckily that all came to fruition. Awesome. So our first topic is around AI. So a growing number of organizations are discovering that the bottleneck isn't the technology, is people knowing how to use it. And recent reporting has highlighted a shift from simply giving people access to AI tools towards building actual genuine AI literacy, thinking, and judgment skills. So the question really has become, with everyone talking about AI adoption, are we focusing on the wrong problem? In 2026, is AI literacy becoming more important than AI technology itself?
I think it's actually both. And I think there's an element that is missing in the question. So you need to make smart decisions about the technology an organization actually needs. And you actually need to make decisions as well about the education side of it, because without it, there's not really adoption. So basically getting the tech right makes adoption possible, and getting the education right is what makes it happen. But you need governance, right? So you can have the right technology and you can have an education plan in place, but if there's no a governance layer, from both angles is just not possible. I've actually seen organizations that they have the right technology, they have an adoption plan in place, like a really solid one, but without governance layer, that ends up being extremely chaotic because there's no security whatsoever, and then people start doing things with guidelines and without really knowing the risks of using this AI tools or this AI initiative. So I guess the question that we need to start asking ourselves is, yes, do we have the right technology? Do we have the right education plan? But do we have a governance strategy that sits as the foundation of both the tech and the adoption?
I mean, as an expert in governance, I couldn't agree more with Anna. I think, yes, for a few years now, I've been thinking we got it all wrong. We are focused on adoption, but we're really not looking at what is that we are adopting, and are we empowering employees and organizations with the right frameworks and the right tools and the right knowledge to understand what is that they're using, how they should be using it, and what are the risks. However, this is not new. This is just the same story that we saw with big data. When data became a thing a few years ago in organization, everything was about being data driven and unlocking business intelligence and big data, but it boiled down to we were trying to adopt things and be data driven, whatever that meant, without really giving the organizations the time to change with that. And we didn't really focus on governance until GDPR came along and made governance a legal requirement with financial consequences. So I think we are at a point now where I'm a little bit surprised, or disappointed, but not surprised that we've made the same mistake again, where we've gone down the route of adopting the technology very enthusiastically without actually looking for a proper plan. But I am glad to see that the conversation is changing and that we are starting to talk about literacy. I agree with Anna, but governance should come first. However, I'll take it if we're talking about literacy, because that means we're starting to talk about educating the organization and employees, and really empowering employees on understanding what is that they're using and what is that they're working with when they work with AI tools, what are the risks, and therefore what are the frameworks that they need to be having in place, right? I'm very, very happy to see that finally we understood that just giving Microsoft Copilot access to the whole organization is not a responsible or effective adoption of AI.
I also think that, because you mentioned it, the point of adopting it really quickly is one of the things that has been an issue, because there's been so much enthusiasm with adopting AI that it has been way too quickly, and we haven't looked at the what we, as in like lots of people that haven't done this right, haven't looked at the governance first. And I think regarding the literacy, I agree with you. I'm also glad to see that there's literacy around AI. The problem that I see is that there's lots of misconception about what AI actually is. So I see a lot of literacy that's actually pseudo literacy because it's not actually right. And I see lots of people getting trained on AI and being told that Copilot, Claude, and ChatGPT is AI and there's nothing else beyond that. And I think that is a massive issue because we are spreading misinformation about AI, and that means that we're also spreading misinformation about risks and mitigations about the use of AI tools.
Yeah,
Very good.
absolutely. I think one thing that I notice is coming from a digital transformation background, so having experience in doing digital transformation in an organization, AI is not the same for organization A, B, and C. It depends what level of maturity you have in the organization in terms of technologies, what market you are, what financial regulations or other regulations you are subject to, depending on your industry. Adoption of AI is going to look different. And you may need to adopt very simple AI and some LLMs would be sufficient. You may need to have very complex bespoke solutions made for you. You may be the one developing them. And all these different stages on the digital transformation journey look very different. We can't forget that also that costs us money. So actually effectively adopting AI into your organization in a way that suits your organization, is a project. It takes time. It has to be aligned with the goals of the organization. It costs money. And a lot of the organizations don't want to pay that money because they don't see the ROI as quickly as if you simply adopt a technology. But it is going to look different at the end of the day. And if you don't follow this, you will end up doing it later. So either you do it up front and you have a project and you've got your budgets and your costs and you understand what is the end goal of the journey. What am I adopting this tool or this technology for? At the end of this project, what is going to be the benefit and the end result, and how is that going to look like?
Yeah, is what we talk a lot, right, about mapping the solution to the problem, not just adopting something just for the sake of adopting. So what are you trying to solve by adopting this and by putting this plan in place?
Yeah. And that's where governance really comes into place. If you're treating this AI adoption in your organization as a project and you really understand how does that look like, what's the end goal, then you're going to be able to map your governance journey and your governance framework along the way, because you are going to understand where you need to put different guidelines and guardrails, where legislation comes into place, or where self-serving within the company is going to be sufficient. So actually, by mapping these, then your data or AI literacy program in the organization will come. So it's kind of like different layers of the same thing. But if you're missing that initial, digital transformation or AI adoption roadmap, you're basically going to have to reverse engineering further down the line, which is what happened when GDPR came into place, and a lot of companies had to change the way they did practically everything.
Both of you said lots of things I wanted to say, but you've said them both better, so I won't repeat. But I think a lot of it ties together with that whole access illusion, right? Because so many years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, you're a big bank, you give everyone access to Copilot and say that's our strategy for AI. Clearly it's not. That access and literacy are just two completely different things. So I think that's interesting how that understanding has evolved, but also the way that people talk about AI and what a career in AI means, because people spoke about prompt engineer being like the next big thing. Like that's just not a job. It's completely unnecessary, but it was like a big hoo-ha about that being a really exciting thing. So there's a lot of education needed on that and what's actually real, and seeing it from a consulting side, it's quite interesting because there's people who've now they're still making money by selling things which aren't impactful, which aren't doing all the governance pieces, which aren't taking into account things like data sovereignty, all this sort of stuff that you guys are both experts in, both in terms of what you do in your day-to-day lives, but also even looking at it from a Spanish perspective, right? So if you guys do it in Scotland, but Spain's leading the way in digital sovereignty, right? So like there's tons of how that impacts what we're all doing on our day-to-day lives as well.
In the last week alone, forecasts have shown record power demand driven by AI data centers, while governments are increasingly concerned about who pays for the infrastructure upgrades, what resources are needed, what that looks to the local communities. And as governments and businesses race to build AI infrastructure, are we heading towards sort of a collision between AI ambition and energy realities?
I'm going to leave the part about AI, data centers, and energy specifically to Ana, because I know she's an expert on the topic. I actually attended a talk she did recently on the subject, and I thought it was brilliant. But I'm going to focus on the government part, because my background is on international relationships, so I'm very interested in this. The question is, who's paying for the infrastructure upgrades that are required to support the AI growth? And it's not just limited to AI, but any technology. I think we need to acknowledge that since the invention of the internet, economies worldwide have changed. Now we have a digital world, digital economy, digital investment, everything has changed. And we use cloud computing, we use cloud infrastructure. Many organizations are solely supported by this type of technologies. So this technology has become the foundation, the backbone of companies, organizations, governments, economies. If tomorrow these disappear, we will all be in a lot of trouble, right? So that's where actors like the European Union or the United States are looking at technology, AI, data centers, but also the cloud computing centers and the big players, the big actors that own these technologies, the Amazons, Googles of the world. We're looking at them and thinking, well, what's going to happen if tomorrow you are not there? Or what's going to happen if tomorrow you are taken over by a government in particular? So we have to acknowledge that reality. The impact that this has on the economy and the current geopolitical landscape, where we're shifting from years of peace to years of instability, and even like friends are looking at each other thinking, well, for how long are you going to be my friend, and can I rely having my data center or my cloud computing in your borders? And how sovereignty when it comes to AI and data, but also the practical question of the cost. We've been accustomed to using technologies that are actually very expensive to maintain. Cloud computing, for anyone who works with cloud technology, we know how expensive it can get, how quickly when you scale up and down. And with AI, it's the same, maintaining these data centers is expensive. And until now, we've been given these services by the companies at a very discounted rate, sometimes for free, sometimes very, very cheap, because these technologies and these services were also experimental on their end. Companies were launching these new technologies and we're trying to scale them up to be able to test them and see if they work or they don't work. But once they have been successful, the proof of concept was successful, and these technologies and infrastructures have been adopted by major companies around the world, they scale up quite quickly, and the cost of sustaining that and the cost of continuing to expand and maintain the increasing demand is also increasing exponentially. And it reaches a point where these companies that were subsidizing and absorbing a lot of the cost have said, enough is enough. We can't, or we don't want to continue absorbing this cost. And now they are passing it to the consumer, which is, tale as old as time. It has happened across different points in history. My question and what I'm very interested in is, are we ready to absorb that cost as organizations? And if we're not, if we cannot absorb that cost, how is that going to impact our own business model? Individually, it will change. A startup won't have the same resources as an international player or a very well-established company. So I think in the next few years, with the change in pricing and costing of these technologies, we are going to see that not all companies are going to be able to afford the services in the way they are right now. And how is that going to change business models?
And that's why where your solution is hosted is very important, because it's tied directly to the price. In terms of the energy, so we were talking about you were saying like, oh, energy is used a lot by data centers, and as I said, it really depends on where the data center is. And actually in Scotland we have the opposite problem, right? So in 2025 we actually paid roughly $350 million to Scottish wind farms off, because it was actually too windy and the grid couldn't really move the power cell fast enough, right? This wind that was thrown away could have actually powered every data center in the country, right? So the thing is that we're wasting clean power in one place while demand grows in another, and the obvious move is to put the compute where that power already is, right? And I think this also relates with the topic of carbon footprint. So the carbon footprint of AI comes down to two numbers, actually, multiplied together. One is how much electricity they use, and also how much carbon intensive it is. And the electricity really depends on the type of models that are running in the background and how much storage also you're using for that. And I say it all the time. This is related actually with the literacy and the adoption. You don't need the latest model to change the colors of a button in an application, right? And I feel like because there's so much misinformation about AI, and we think that the latest model is the better model, we are misusing models, and I'm not only talking about LLMs, right? Because it seems like there's also this misunderstanding that LLMs are the only models that exist. You could use cheaper models and smaller models that are not large language models to solve other type of tasks, right? So it seems like we have forgotten about classical machine learning, and that works absolutely fine. And there are tasks that just like using an LLM is not justified. So that is one part of the equation. And the second one, what I said is that how carbon intensive that electricity is. So that depends on where you run your job. So the same job, so the same model, the same chip, the same result. In Scotland, that is around 20 grams of CO2 per kilowatt per hour on a wind or hydro grid. And in Poland, because it's mostly cold grid, is around 600, right? And so that is 20 times the carbon, and the only thing that changed is where it is, right? So I think there's lots of misunderstanding around that as well. So Scotland is actually a really good place for a data center to exist, because it can be powered by renewable energies 100%, and if done it right, it can actually avoid using water. Well, not entirely, but much less than other data centers that their energy comes from water. And that actually has an impact not only on environment, but also on cost, right? So you can offer a data center that is not only sustainable, but also you have predictable cost, and actually a predictable cost that is like much, much less than maybe a solution that would be hosted in a data center like with Amazon in the US.
That's a really interesting point that I don't think a lot of people
No,
consider.
this is I keep on saying that there's lots of misconceptions about AI, and I think the biggest misconception is about where AI actually lives and the implication that it has. I don't think people really know about all this.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, and it's the cloud, right? The people we need. It's not a light and fluffy thing. A cloud, the cloud, right?
It's a difficult thing. Yeah,
yeah, it is. But we spoke on this podcast to someone who's in the energy industry and talked about sort of the stack that you needed to build that technology, and it's very much like the mining stack, because you need minerals, you need different all the sort of stuff that you need to create that, and that's one thing. But then the sort of outputs, we didn't really consider the location piece on it. We were talking about, okay, we're in different countries, we're in Africa, we're doing all this sort of stuff, but no one really that cost output, that sum that you gave was actually really brand new news to me. So it was really interesting.
Yeah. And with Spain is something similar. So where I'm from Zaragoza, is a region called Aragon. And in the middle of Aragon, we have a clay desert. So there's nothing in there. There's lots of festivals that happen there because of that. There's just nothing, right? But it's the perfect place to have a data center because we have a lot of wind. So that part in Spain, we call it the region of wind because of how much wind we have, but also because there's nothing and there's no mountains or anything around, we get lots and lots of sun. It's actually a very extreme weather. So we get like lots of high temperatures during the day, and also especially during the summer, and very low temperatures at night, and also during the winter. It's like a desert basically weather, because it is a desert, right? So you can put lots of solar panels there and get energy from the sun. But also one of the biggest rivers in Spain goes through that region, so you also have the water that you could use as a backup as well. So that is where there's lots of investment for like big hyperscalers to build their data centers there in Aragon.
Amazing. I think
Yeah.
that's one side of it. The other side, which one of you mentioned, around appropriate use as well, because it's you don't always need to have a sledgehammer to crack a walnut, right? And you've got so many simple tasks that are just inappropriately being, someone's throwing a high-powered LLM at it to figure out an average on a spreadsheet. You're like, why on earth
Yes.
are you trying to use these tools to do this thing?
Yeah.
So yeah, I
And
think
not only that, yeah, we need to understand that also not every single problem is solved by AI. I think AI is used as a magic wand that solves every single problem, and sometimes just a script solves the issue, or just straight up mathematics or statistical modeling. But again, it comes from the issue about education and knowing what is available out there, right? I think when we one advice for organizations when they're trying to do AI adoption is bring someone in the team that is a little bit of an anti-hero when it comes to AI. So someone that is a little bit against AI, that knows about AI, but has a more broad experience, so they understand that there are other ways and other technological ways in where you can solve the problem.
I think that is so good. And yeah, I'm not a Luddite at all. Like, I love using AI for many different things within my role and within the business, but it's the appropriate thing, because you still want to use your brain, right? You still want to read something that a human has actually written or has solved a problem with the most appropriate tools, rather than just something that's been churned out in without putting any forethought into it as well. So yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that. Appropriate use is very, very important.
I think that's why it's so important, going back to having your digital transformation plan and your roadmap towards AI adoption. If you know what the end goal is, what is that AI is going to do for your company and how is that going to look like, you can then assign resources where they are needed. And then you won't make certain tools available to certain departments or teams where they aren't needed. So you will actually cut out the misuse, or like ensure that the use and access of AI tools is proportionate to the task at hand, rather than just allowing everybody access to the hammer.
Well, exactly. I've mentioned the example of someone using something crazy on a spreadsheet, because I was speaking to someone at a financial services firm who will obviously remain nameless, but they had a junior person coming in and say, I can't figure out how to do this average in this column with an LLM. So why, what are you doing? Like, absolutely insane. But they're also at the point where they had been in the whole token maxing thing, which I hate that language, but they had been, and then like they had to switch off access to some of the more expensive models and tooling as well, because the costs have just gone through the roof. But they've obviously not done the governance piece. But then that goes on to another point where they'd actually been sold an AI literacy program or a AI upskilling piece by a consulting firm, which obviously have just sold them some nonsense. Like, here's what you can do. I hadn't taken into account any of the good stuff that actually has to be done to prop up success.
Yeah, knowledge is power, and it can always go the other way around. I think people that know this also take advantage of ignorance of people, right? And especially with AI being all over the place and the feeling of not being left behind. I think lots of companies and lots of consultancies selling AI programs just take advantage of people not knowing how good looks like in this sector.
No, I fully agree with you. And what we're selling is not that, I assure you. We are very much focused on we're a B Corp,
Very
right?
good.
We're like all of
Very
our
good.
stuff is very much focused on making sure that we are doing the right thing and leaving places better than we find them. So very much
Mhm.
on doing the right.
I think a lot of people are going to rediscover the algorithm again. I think it's just like, maybe you just need an algorithm. You don't need an LLM. Also really love the part about the location in terms of the data centers, because I think there's huge debates going around in terms of where they should be placed. And I think the actual sort of efficacy of where it's placed is not the conversation. It's more like, oh, there's space, we'll just pop it here. Whereas that idea of the location actually means that it can be more efficient. It can be a better data center. Really isn't brought up. We're having a huge argument right now here in Cape Town about a data center that they want to put up somewhere. So it won't be run on renewables. It will, it's happened to the electricity grid. Um, and it's sort of like, well, we're one of the most windiest cities. And only that we have sunshine 90% of the time. So it's sort of, you're just not doing it right. So I do feel like that's probably one of the things that maybe regulations should be looking at covering as well.
Yeah.
Is that location.
Oh. So, and actually, you can actually measure how sustainable a data center is. So there are certain metrics that allow you to determine the environmental impact that your data center has. This doesn't exist as far as I'm aware, but if someone listening to this knows about this and knows that they exist, please message me. But I think that should be like a minimal threshold that would allow data centers to be built, or like they should be compliance around monitoring these metrics to determine if a data center is compliant or not in terms of environmental impact, and have thresholds for each metric and say, okay, if you're not below this number, then you can't run. I'm sorry. Right?
Yeah, it's wild that that's not a part of the conversation when it's such
I
a
know.
huge impact. It's
I know. I know. But again, it's just, I don't think people know that this could be a thing. So
this is something that we've just discovered on this podcast. No?
maybe.
Well, I go off to the council to bring that to their attention. Also, it's just going to be me and some town hall just giving up stats from this podcast. The UN Technology Agency recently launched a global initiative focused specifically on trust and accountability when it comes to AI agents, really reflecting the growing concern that these autonomous systems are moving faster than the rules governing them, which I think is something that we've spoken about at length. Are we about to create a whole new category of management in people whose job is essentially managing AI employees? And additionally, from a data perspective, how are we planning necessary guardrails in these new systems?
Sure. I mean, again, for me, governance is key, and I'm very passionate about ethics. So I'm going to say, no, I don't think we need a new category of management of AI employees. And no, I don't think we should be looking at AI employees. And AI is a tool, whether it's a system, an autonomous system, an LLM, is a tool. It's a tool that needs to be used in context and appropriately and proportionally by people. And that's where human oversight, and I'm not simply talking about human in the loop or human on the loop. I'm talking about proper human oversight, and that means governance. Human oversight is a fancy word for governance in the use of AI tools. And what we need to have is guardrails, frameworks, system processes that allow the different AI systems, particularly autonomous systems that do have that level of autonomy, to be doing their own thing within certain parameters, but always with the oversight of a human. What humans bring here is context, and it's something that we're starting to hear about, contextualization of AI and use of AI, and it's about understanding that you need to bring in that human expertise, that knowledge about the company, about the market, about the different processes and policies internally, about the legislation, but also the ethical framework. Just because something can be done and the autonomous system could do it, and it happens to match the criteria or the triggers or the variables, it doesn't necessarily mean that it should be done, or it could be done better in a different way. I do think governance and human oversight are always going to be, or should always be, part of the conversation, even in an ideal scenario where everything works so smoothly that 90% of the times the systems get it right. We are not planning for when the system gets it right. What we want to get ahead is for when the system gets it wrong, what can we do then? And I think that's where human oversight and humans are so important. So I don't see that we should be talking about AI employees. We should be talking about modifying and updating the existing roles and responsibilities to adapt to using these AI tools, and then giving the human employees the tools, the processes, the frameworks, and the training to be able to handle this, right?
You know this meme that is this guy with like a massive bucket of water, and there's like a hole and there's water coming out, and then he puts like tape and is like the solution, like the easy solution, you know what I mean? So I was yeah, it reminded me of that. And it's like, okay, well, we're not going to put governance in place, we're just going to hire someone and we're just going to call them AI agents management. Problem solved. And that is definitely not how it should work. And I totally agree with Barbara. I think, you know, AI is a field, is something broader, but all of these AI apps, they are just tools that can help people in the roles, right? So it's not a replacement. I really hate when people say, oh, AI is gonna steal my job. Well, if you say that, you just don't know what AI actually is. Um, and for me, what is concerning is that we are talking about trust now. It is like, come on, like, first of all, AI has been around for more than 40 years. We are a little bit late, but not only not only AI. Why are we talking about AI agents as something extremely new? Agentic AI has been around for such a long time. And in fact, arguably, agents that will build around other algorithms and models that are not LLMs, they show more agency than LLM-based agents. So why are we talking about it now and not where AI agents start to become a thing? So when, for example, we were starting to build agents that were based on reinforcement learning, because this is not new at all. So that is the part that is concerning for me. And I think that shows how quickly the technology and the field of AI, and again, I mean the field that has been going on for decades, right, is evolving, and how slow we are catching up when it comes to regulations, but also education and understanding of what the field actually is. And for me, that is a major concern. And I feel like the conversations around AI revolve around AI agents that are LLM based. And if we only focus about those type of solutions, we're missing so much, and we are not going to put governance layer in place that are effective because we are narrowing our vision to something particular and very specific.
Yeah, fully agree with that.
It's where it's back to the education piece, isn't it? Because you ask 10 people on the street about AI, they're all going to talk about LLMs, but 9 out of 10 of them are going to talk about LLMs, where it's, as you say, it's been going since the 40s. It's not many of these concepts are not new. They're evolved, and I think there's been an acceleration and adoption of things, but not necessarily the education piece of this. People are now understanding that there's heightened risk because it's gone up in a curve like this. And suddenly, well, okay, now who does own the risk with the exposure that now we personally or our business now has, because our data is everywhere, it has access to our finances, our health, it's everything, it's everywhere. So it's an interesting problem. But again, severe lack of education to get people to understand what they're actually talking about sometimes.
I think it goes back to the fact that there is this hype of, with OpenAI and OpenAI tools such as like Claude, ChatGPT, there has been this major adoption across the population in ways that are sometimes just more anecdotal and for fun than actually useful in a way, because a lot of people are using ChatGPT instead of Google search right now. And it's like, well, is that the best way to use, ChatGPT and in terms of like cost and everything like that? Or we're using ChatGPT as an AI companion. And it's like, well, okay, again, is that the best thing? But because it has become such a hype, organizations are rushing to, to adopt it without really thinking, again, in the big picture. If I look at my strategy, my goal, my means, and what is that I need? Do I need to have Copilot or Claude or whatever it is accessible for all my employees? Is this something that is going to bring return of investment? Or is this actually something that is introducing a lot of risk for the organization for very little return? Because sometimes just because something can be done doesn't mean it's a smart move to do it. And I think we're so focused on the hype in a lot of the times. I'm not saying everyone. There are companies that are doing incredibly good use of AI, and I've seen AI adoption plans that were very well focused and very well studied. But it's not, I don't think it's the majority.
I think there's people trying to make a quick buck, right? And
as well, yeah,
and there's people who are also trying to be a sundial. There's just absolutely no need for some of the things that are happening. But to the other side, I'm very much a promoter and believer that there's good to be had, and there are so many companies and individuals that are doing amazing things. So it's again goes back to that appropriate use point that someone made earlier.
Awesome. Well, to finish off, we like to ask what your cultural pick of the week is. So something that has inspired you this week. Anna.
Oh, it's Tuesday. Can Barbara go?
Sure.
Pick of the week. You go first.
Last week, what's inspired you last week?
Or last month? I don't get inspired very often. I'm just it takes me.
What is it?
Okay, I have a right. Let me say, I'm actually very inspired by Barbara. I have to say that it's true. I think thank you so much, Derek, for connecting us. I think it was a really good match. I think it's really inspiring for me, other women in STEM, especially on the data and the AI world, and also women that are not afraid to be bold, speak out loud, say what they want to say, and being confident on what they have to say out loud and to the world. So yeah, I'm very inspired by Barbara.
Beautiful.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Anna. Yeah, Derek, I was saying to Anna, like, I think we're a great match. Derek, for those listening to the podcast that don't know about it, Derek actually connected both of us, and he was like, Anna, I think you need to meet this girl, Barbara. I think you really need to meet Anna. And the moment we met, I was like, yeah, I can see why Derek wanted us to connect. Absolutely. And it's been a learning every day that I've interacted with Anna and just following her on LinkedIn and everything that she says. It's just been a learning for me, and I do look up to you, Anna, as well a lot. Like I said, the chat that you did a couple of weeks ago about sustainability and AI and data centers was very, very inspiring for me. So yeah, thank you so much for that. I did. I did have an answer prepared though. I feel like now if I
have to.
Yeah, if I don't say that I'm very inspired by Anna, I look bad now. Anna, you really let me there.
Sorry.
Not at all. But I do have an answer, and this is not a plug, but anyone and everyone who is in the world of AI need to take a look at this book. It's called The New Age of Sexism by Laura Bates. And it really talks about how the AI revolution, particularly LLMs, so accessible for everyone, and like the deep fakes and things like that, how it's actually reinventing misogyny and how it's making things a lot more harder. We've had a very long, difficult fight for feminism and bringing equality into the picture. And we're making a lot of good progress in the last 50, 40, 30, 20 years. Things have improved a lot. However, I think we don't look at how all technologies have a good and a bad side, right? There is another great book called Technology Isn't Neutral that focuses on this aspect. But I think and this book is great because this book focuses on how we are so focused on the profit side of AI and giving the public what they want, that we are actually perpetuating the stereotypes and really harming the most vulnerable collectives. So it is focused on sexism, but it also touches on other vulnerable collectives. So it does shine a line of how throughout every technological development, including AI, we are failing again and again to protect the more vulnerable collectives. And how it could be done better by embedding ethics and governance during the development stages, not as an afterthought. So going back to what Ana said about you need to have an anti-hero in these projects, you need to have someone embedded at the beginning of the project who looks at the risks and is concerned about ethics and governance and actually flags these risks so that we can build the guardrails for safety while we are developing. Because sometimes, and people who develop technical projects will understand, sometimes if you don't include safety by design, governance by design, privacy by design into a development process, there is such a point of no return where if you've not embedded it earlier on, you just can't do it anymore. And this book really shines a light on that. So I recommend that.
I'm very happy that you are recommending that book because I think we need more visibility about how AI has impacted sexualization of women and the impact that has on the industry of porn. And I'm not sure if I can say this word, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm actually on the mix of creating a non-charity around this because I have myself been a victim of this, interestingly enough, and ironically enough, been working in AI. So it's actually a topic that I'm very passionate about, that touches me personally. And yes, for everyone that is listening to this podcast, please read that book. And I was already aware to that book. It's really important, again, coming back to the point of education, to know about the risks, to know about what AI can actually do when there are no guidelines in place, and also general education about ethics and morals, especially for young kids that are starting to get their brain formed around these topics, is very important.
That was amazing. Thank you for being so open. And we'll
It's all right.
we will send a link to the book, but also share some information around that charity if you don't mind as well. And
Yes,
because
will do.
Yes,
I will never be silent about this. So yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
It's such an important topic, and I think it's so prevalent. I don't think people understand how prevalent this has become and how big of an issue it has become. Just sort of image manipulation and all of those sort of things. I think there's sort of the leading expert on deep fakes is saying he can't tell what's real and what's fake anymore. And it's huge.
Sorry,
Derek,
what
what
is
is
the negative issue? Maybe we can talk about how
fantastic.
fantastic.
Like,
No, please. Like,
this is a women in STEM podcast now from next week on,
absolutely.
Derek. It's just,
Okay.
Derek, what has inspired you?
Oh, come on. No, I'm not following that.
Nice guy. Just put it in mind.
I'm sorry, Derek. I think there is only one right answer to what has inspired you this week, and the answer is us.
Absolutely.
Yes, basically, Barbara and Ana have inspired us this week.
Yes, indeed. So I could go. That was good.
Yeah. And again, it really shows the importance of different voices, diverse voices on these topics, because I think that's again one of the things that is usually missed if people aren't in the room. You don't have these conversations. So getting people like Barbara and Ana in the room to have these discussions, I think it really opens up a whole different way of thinking for all of us. So,
Absolutely.
thank you to both of you.
Thank you both so much. That's been absolutely awesome today.
But Derek, I'm curious now. What was that book?
So it's the book of Martin.
Why is the worst title to bring us?
Oh, what? I was like, I don't want to have this on my desk, but it's the book that Martin Scorsese read. head of creating Goodfellas. So it's an amazing book, but I don't want to talk about it. I will talk. We're going to have coffee and we'll talk about it. And I will get a copy of that other book by then, and we'll have something to talk about.
We're at the next change makers.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you to both of you for joining us. Thank you, Derek, for joining. And thank you to everyone who's listening. To find out more about our sessions, our briefings, our product builders, all the expert tech work, head on over to our website, our social channels, and of course, follow this podcast for more. We will see you next time. Thank you, everyone.